accueillons maintenant Dag Van Wetter qui va venir vous parler en anglais d'Open Dialogue et je le laisse se présenter. Merci.
Merci bien. I was asked to do my presentation in English. Even I'm not a native English speaker, but I can easily talk about open dialogue in English. I will try to tell a bit about open dialogue because there's so much to tell. I'm involved in an organization, Psyche, VZW, that's working for the whole of Flanders, co-creating recovery-based, community-based practices, and also open dialogue is part of it. So I'm going to talk about our co-creation of open dialogue in Flanders. When we are inspired about open dialogue, but we take care of being inspired. Because we know and we realize, and we learned this from Simon Sinek, who is not talking or who has written not so much about mental health, but he has written a lot about development of new visions, of new practices, that we have to take care to be inspired and try to copy something without knowing why we are interested or inspired. So he wants us to remember and to invite us to keep on talking about why are we doing this, why are we doing something, and learn not by asking ourselves, but certainly by asking others, what are your motives, what are the reasons that you are doing this, what are the reasons that you are doing a job, but what are the reasons that you are seeking for help, for instance, or that you are seeking for support as a family member. And when we are engaged to talk about this why, then it's safe to talk about principles, for instance, open dialogue principles, because we connect it each time again with this why, and then it's safe to go to the practice, to the what, because the practice is not some kind of protocol that you're trying to repeat something that has been done in another country or that you have been doing yesterday, or maybe with the same family trying to repeat what happened the previous time, but to do it all over again, and that's a really important difference between repeating something and doing it all over again, daring to do it all over again, thinking about this why and thinking about how these principles can work out in this new situation. I'm gonna learn you one word in Flemish, and that's herbronnen, because it's not easy to translate, but it's about going back to the why. And the word why, officially we translate it to waarom, but actually in our Flemish dialect we rather use the word waarvoor. And that's much more precise, because it's about what are we doing this for, who are we doing this for, who are we doing this with. So that's really helpful to use this word. And then the word herbronnen, it's referring to going back to the well, going back to the source, going back to the reason why we are doing something and why people need something. Of course, it's related to the national reform, and that's, of course, an important evolution and an important trigger, but that's, of course, quite top-down process, but at the same time, we were already seeking connection between organizations and teams, and also with people with their own experience, with their own lived experience and family experience, to do things together. That's much more of a bottom-up process that's helped, of course, by the top-down process. And these are the things that we were already saying to each other. If we really want to do things differently, then we have to do this together, then we need each other. But also this, how to learn and to keep on learning, to be an expert without stumbling over our own expertise. That's That means two things. Of course, we have to be an expert. People rely on this expertise. But let's keep this expertise in our backpack and first listen. First listen to everyone who's involved, and then we can much more be an expert in trying to reach something from our backpack that may be helpful. But also this one. Well, maybe it's a bit of a silly metaphor, but if you're annoyed by the traffic jam, then you're part of it. So we have to dare to change ourselves also. So we have to learn from each situation and be an expert in being co-creative with our expertise, trying to connect with people, what people are needing and what we could do for them. That helps us thinking or rethinking about patient and family participation, because who is actually participating with whom? It's not about thinking how we can help a client or a family to participate with what we are doing, because they are already participating. It's their story which they are participating in, but maybe they are losing themselves in the story or losing each other. But if we really want to take their participation seriously, we have to participate with where they are now. That's what we have to do. And even if they don't know what's happening with them, and even if they are losing themselves and each other, that's where they are. So we have to participate and try to understand what's happening in the here and now with them. So we have to be an active participant, trying to connect with what people are, by asking these questions, and not only asking this question to the client, but to everyone involved, everyone who is involved in the story. Maybe we can ask these questions when they are together, but even when they are not sitting together, they have to, we have to respect them and ask them how they are doing. And if they are sitting together, then they can hear this, their responses, their first responses, maybe from each other. And that's really important, that people feel asked something, how they are, and that they hear each other's response. That's what we are trying to do. And of course we can't inform people because we have professional secrecy, but asking to family members, for instance, but I see that you have many questions, and maybe it's not easy to answer, but how are you doing? And what does this question mean to you? So that's what we can respond to. Also, meeting people, even when we got a telephone to visit people, or maybe people are already coming to the ward, it's just a first meeting. And we think that we know a lot because there's so many stories told from them and about them, but it's actually just a first meeting. And the only purpose of this first meeting that it may be a new beginning. A new beginning that makes it possible to have another meeting. That's something that we were really trying to say to each other and to motivate each other. Even this is all before we chose for open dialogue. So, but that's one of that's part of the process of the why. And this thing that the first meeting has to be helpful in a way that there may be another meeting. The next meeting is also important in another for another reason, because we let people experience that there is always a next time, and that's really important. It's not everything has to be said or be solved or be understood in this first meeting. There's always a next time. That's really important. But of course, being an active participant, that's not something that we easily talk about, even not in Flemish. But we like the word compagnons. we know it's actually French, but we also use it, and we pronounce it a little bit different, and maybe in a little bit more broad sentence, because it helps us in every kind of way. Who is your companion? Who is also involved in the story? Who is also overwhelmed by the situation? Who can be helpful? Who can we also involve and support? Because it's not a question, should we involve people because they are already involved? But if they are involved, we should also support them because they are part of the story. So how can we be supportive as companions? Who are our companions? Of course, it's the people that we try to bring together. Who are your companions, the people that we try to hear in the story and to also invite, but also thinking about who do we need as extra companions, because if we as professionals want to work this way, we don't only need the people in the story, we also need colleagues, maybe from the same team, maybe from other teams, that are prepared to work like this. And that are maybe already involved also in the story as professionals. So that's how we try to bring companions together. So that was what we already tried to do, and that we were really engaged and motivated in. But then, then it was about meeting inspiring practices that seemed to work well elsewhere, and that seemed to make these principles, these motivations, these values practical. So that's how we met Open Dialogue. I'm going to talk about Open Dialogue, and it's not easy to talk about Open Dialogue in a short way because there's so much to say, but I'll try. Open Dialogue has 7 principles, and well, it's already important to know that these 7 principles come from 2 different perspectives. Open Dialogue is a way of organizing services, and at the same time it's a way of being with people. And don't get distracted by the fact that there's only 2 principles about being with people, because they really are covering the first 5 already. But it's not enough to have good intentions. To be with people, you really have to be prepared to also do something in a different way. So that's what these principles are all about. Immediate help, well, what's already important is that immediate help is not about immediate intervention. It could be about immediate intervention, but it is about immediate response. If people are in need, they have to have the experience that someone is prepared to respond to what they are feeling. And not taking over, but respond. And really trying to understand, not only to the person in the center of concern, but also to the others. That's more important. So when we hear that someone is looking for help, maybe it's the client himself or herself, or maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a professional who's already involved, then we respond to this person and we ask to tell the story and ask if we could also connect to these other people in the story, because we also want to respond to them. And as all those people are responded to, are responding to each other, and are involving each other to have this first meeting. So they are taken seriously in what they 10 minutes, sorry. I'll work it out. So that's important, and so we don't only try to connect with the person in the center of concern, but to everyone involved. The family members involved, other people close by involved, but also people professionally are already involved. We are trying to bring those people together because we have to respond to everyone. And it's not about focusing on the client and the center of concern, but to focus on the relations, because it's something that they are all suffering from somehow. And because otherwise they wouldn't have called us. If it works out, okay. Even the professional, he wouldn't have called us if everything is going okay. So there's always a reason that someone is trying to build the circle of support. The third principle is about the flexibility, and it's just also taking people seriously. Of course, we have a quite busy agenda as professionals, but they also have to make some choices. So if we have to make some choices where and when we can meet, they also have to make some choices. And maybe some people can't be there or are not allowed to be there because some others don't allow them or are not ready to be there. But then we have this first meeting, and this first meeting makes it possible to have another meeting. And that's really important. Not waiting until everything is ready to sit together, but sit together with the first people who are ready and are involved or allowed to sit together. And this makes it possible to have another meeting with those other people. It always works out. You have to begin. You have to find a start. Not waiting until everything is arranged. And well, this also has to do with responsibility. The responsibility is quite a personal responsibility that the first person, professional or team that is contacted has the responsibility to organize the first meeting. And of course, sometimes a professional gets a phone call, for instance, and he thinks, well, that's not for our team. But then you can do two things. You can say to the ones that's calling, well, that's not for us, maybe you should call to the others. But you can also help connect them and say, we will connect to the other team. And then it easily becomes a shared responsibility, immediately. That's what happens. And then you can figure out who will be there, but you're already connecting. You're already broadening the circle. That's really important. Psychological continuity is not about the continuity of always the same psychologist. Well, it would be perfect if it would be this, but that's how we see this as professional. It's about the continuity, the feeling of continuity, the experience of continuity. How are we helping to connect the dots, to connect the stories? So we are always, in an open dialogue meeting, we are always with two people facilitating, and always one of the facilitators there was there the previous time will be there the next time. So we connect the dots. That's how we do it. And in this way, people have the feeling that they can tell their story, the next step in their story. So there's always a next time. People can take time. Tolerance of uncertainty, that's not the most easy principle, but it's actually the most fair principle, because we don't know. We don't know until they know. So we can't take over until they know what they need. So, and it's, of course it's about safety, but safety is not taking over. Safety is giving everyone the chance to hold something, to reconnect, and that's much stronger. And we even, the differences between people have to be spoken out. And even the things that we are as thinking and maybe proposing as facilitators, we are reflecting about these differences. It's much more helpful to have a talk about differences and to be allowing these differences than to seek for a compromise, because people are experiencing the story in many ways. That's what we want to do. And that's what we have to have a dialogue about. Not about what is the problem, what does it mean for you, and what does it mean for the others, and how is it for the others that it means something else. So that's what it's all about. That's what we are trying to do. There's a lot more to say, but I want to use this quote from a Russian philosopher who actually didn't have much to do with open dialogue, but he wrote a lot about human relations. And one of his famous quotes is, for the world and consequently for the human being, so for someone who is trying to say something, not only what about what he is experiencing, but also what others are experiencing, and maybe you can talk about it. There's nothing more inhuman than to not get a response. There's nothing more inhuman for all of us. Imagine that you are suffering and not understanding what is happening to you, what is happening to your family member, and you can't talk about this. That's what it's all about. And of course, a way of being with people is about one, proximity and co-creating safety in another way. Okay, but this is also about our active connection and participation. So it's not only about being with, it's also about doing it. We have to be prepared to do something in another way. I'm going to take it much faster now. So this is how an open dialogue meeting is more or less happening, because it's not a strict structure. But we are with two people, and we help listen to everyone. And we are also inviting everyone. So an open dialogue meeting already starts before we are sitting together, because we are thinking with them who can be helpful, who can also be supportive, who needs support, who is also overwhelmed. And we bring some of those people together. And then we ask each of them why are you sitting here? What brings you here? How are you feeling now? And then they hear these things from each other, and we don't interrupt them. The only thing we do is giving back the words, their own words, literally, because we want to stay with their words, and we want the others sitting there also staying with their words. That's what we do. And then, when everyone has been able to say something, then we ask the question, and that's where the dialogue starts. Not asking the question, what is the purpose of this meeting? No, where can we start? We've heard everyone, where can we start? It's about finding the start, not finding the solution. Finding a start. And then we reflect on it. And then we sit with those two facilitators, and we are postponing our reflection, of course, because we already heard so much. We already thought so much. We have already so many things that touched us, and that's what we reflect on. And then the people respond, and some of the reflections are not taken. But that's good, because if we would have asked these questions directly, people wouldn't have the choice. Now they can choose what's safe. And the things that they don't pick up, it's not that they deny those things, but they keep it in their inner dialogue. And that's really important to know this and to trust this, because this inner dialogue about the things that can't be spoken of not now, that are the things that are calming them now. So a person in crisis, in a psychotic crisis, is calming down, because everything is making sense again. Family members who are not understanding each other are calming down. And even us as professionals, we are calming down. Because the things that we were thinking and maybe urging to say in the beginning of the meeting, they changed a lot. That's how open dialogue makes us all different. Well, this is kind of a scheme. I wanted to show this. This is how open dialogue is spreading, certainly in Europe and America, but also always regionally, and it's really a bottom-up process. This is how we were setting this up in open dialogue. We had 2 conferences, and we were quite surprised about how many people wanted to be at that conference. So we had another conference, and again there were not enough seats. So I was working in the region of Bruges, and there was much more interest in other regions. And we, even before we were ready, we were already starting, because we already felt how we could start. Maybe we're not ready, but what can we do the next time that we meet people? What can we do already differently? And that's how it started. And then, of course, we had some encouragement by the government in many ways. We also had an Open Minds Award because we were in a sustainable innovation towards better mental health care and meaningful support for each other. International companions, of course. And then we had really open dialogue trainings. And then that's really some kind of snowball rolling downhill, because one open dialogue training leads to another one. We always found two organizations, mental health organizations, taking the shared responsibility to organize this for 10 of their members, 10 from the other, and we had 10 places left for other organizations. And those 10 people involved their organization to have an extra. In this way, we already had 5 open dialogue trainings in 4 years. And then something happened that the government also installed 2 foundation trainings, also in the French-speaking part of Belgium. And the motivation was there, why? Was because we have to offer people who are in crisis or are facing mental health challenges a new kind of start. So they already knew what it was all about. So now, in 5 years' time, it's already the 8th open dialogue training. So there's something moving. This is something that people in Limburg are making a poster of it, where they are trying to visualize, for instance, tolerating uncertainty. If there's so much uncertainty, there's so much possible. That's what they told. We are also setting up a Soteria house from these same principles. That's very close to my heart. I also did, I'm also an open dialogue trainer, and my thesis is about the why of open dialogue. There's so many encouraging quotes of people from different perspectives. This is some part of it. People themselves really feel thankful, but also professionals feel very engaged, because it brings them back to the reason why they became a professional. It's also part of a dialogical landscape, because there's also other practices, and they're all built on the same principles, but they make the landscape much larger. And of course, it's normal that open dialogue stays in dialogue with other practices. But this is what it really boils down to. It's about keeping a self ready to learn, to listen, so others are invited to speak. And then keep learning to speak in another way, in a more reflective way, that people can really listen, because they are also listened to. And what's really special is, if we do this as professionals, then people start to do this with each other. And that's how a road is built, by walking on it together. That's what I wanted to do.